Slater, we appreciate your time. What'd you learn, if anything, about the rookies today?
They got good personalities. That's what I care about, right? I like covering interesting quotes, talkers, people who are going to mix it up a little bit, let us behind the scenes a little bit. And it looks like, particularly with the Axel, they got another one. We've covered so many personalities over the years around here. Bonte, you know this well. I think that really kind of adds to why the fandom has become what it's become. And I think Yaxel is the next in a long list of personalities.
Yeah, no doubt he's got a personality. LeJay Jones, sneaky personality. He reminds me of young Clay. Kind of quiet, but once you get him rolling, he starts to talk, and he'll make you chuckle a couple times here. But he may not factor into this season's team, at least on a two-way deal. We'll see about that. But Yaxel will play. And I thought Granny and I have been talking about his slates. His quote about, I hate screening, not a good screener. Well, you know what? If you want to play on this team, you better learn how to screen. So, Granny's asked me, what will they do with Yaxel? Will he play a lot? And Slater, you would know this. Looking at their roster right now, he has to play at least 25 to 30 minutes a game, right? No matter what.
Yeah, all factors point to that. Number one, just think about before they even drafted Yaxel. Remember Steve Kerr's return press conference? Mm-hmm. I asked him literally about playing the rookie, and he said we have to. So, even if they got Burries or a teenager or, Nate Amen, I don't know, name your, much more raw prospect, I think they would have played anyways just because of situation and franchise arc and recent history and just the need to develop a younger layer of a roster here, number one. And then number two, they didn't get a raw rookie. They got, one of the older prospects to come out in a while, certainly to get picked that high in a while. And part of the appeal of Yaxel is he should help immediately. I'm curious to see in Summer League, is he dominant in Summer League? But regardless, they got to play him through some struggles. And again, we know the situation, right? Jimmy Butler for a while, Moses Moody for a while. He used the word start today. He said maybe even start. I don't know. You guys see that soundbite he had when I was asking him about his conversation with Steve? Mm-hmm. And I think he was truthfully relaying some of the conversations he has had with Steve, and I think that word may have come up in those conversations. So obviously that is a long way away, and it will need to be earned. But the fact that word is already being uttered, I thought was interesting.
Slater, how and where do you think he gets on the court? Because I know a question that he was asked today was what positions he's comfortable playing, and he seemed hesitant about playing a small ball five. At least maybe he's not quite ready for it. In my mind, he seemed more like a Steve Kerr 4, but he said that his best position is the 3.
Everybody's a 4, right? That's what everybody's become a 4 the last several years. Look, he's a 3, 4, 5. You could say small ball 5. If you're out there with Draymond Green, you're taller than him, but Draymond's basically playing the centers. A lot of times that's who you guard, and I think he's going to be able to guard. I think we know 3s and 4s they're going to have him on. I'm curious if he can guard 2s, can 1s potentially, I'm sure maybe not the quicker ones, maybe the stronger ones he'll be better on. Are you going to throw him on Jokic? No, not necessarily, but they're going to play a ton of, if they're playing Phoenix or something like that, like he could be the 5 in the lineup against, whatever lineups Phoenix is throwing out there. So part of what they love about him is the versatility. And I think he seems that he will fit a bunch of lineups. And I would say the one thing that's really going to matter is what is his 3-point shot as a rookie, right? What is he, 37% at Michigan? Mm-hmm. If he can be 37, 38, and I don't want to say a feared shooter, like you're, scrambling out and running him off the line, but at least a spacer to a degree. At least he's not left completely alone. Then I think he can basically play in any lineup.
From what you watched on film so far, because I know you do a lot of film study on these prospects, you do it as well as anybody in this business, Slater. What did you see from Yaxel when it came to defending on the perimeter, standing in front of guards? Did you see a lot of that, or was he primarily in the post?
To me, it's more wings. It's not bigs. You got to remember the front court he played in. What's interesting, at UAB, he was a center. You look at his steal blocks number, in the lower level, and he was a small ball 5 to a degree on that team. But he just played with a lottery center and a lottery power forward, which, by the way, that front court at Michigan was insane. But that allowed him to guard more wings, maybe guard some guards a little bit too. I'm not sure he has the quickest hips, side to side. He's going to be, able to stay with the Kyries of the world or your quicker guards, the Morants. But I think, like I said, a James Harden. I'm curious, if they put him on Shea for a stretch of a game. Obviously, you wonder how foul prone he would be in a situation like that. But maybe the guards that are trickier and stronger, he could maybe handle. The quicker ones, I'd be a little bit more concerned about.
Anthony Slater of ESPN with us here on 95.7 The Game. Bonte and Grandy in for Willard and Dibbs. You reported yesterday the Al Horford news. Slater, he declined his player option but signed a new 2-year deal worth about $14 million for the 2 years. Did that surprise you, the added year for Al Horford? And does that mean anything about a plan, widespread plan for the Warriors going into the next 2 years, or is that just a one-off thing for Al Horford?
I mean, it didn't surprise me, mostly because I talked to him, right? I talked to him for about 15 minutes the other day, and he's, still feeling good. You could tell he felt like there was some unfinished business as far as what he came over for and what last year turned into for two reasons. Number one, the Jimmy injury obviously spiraled him down the 37-45 path, but also, I think he was very disappointed that he only played 40 games. He basically had me go back through his game log history, and you look at the last Boston years, and we're talking about a guy who was in his mid to late 30s in Boston, and it was 65 games, 66, 64, and a lot of those missed games were just skipping one side of back-to-backs. Generally, he has avoided injuries, and he takes care of his body so well. So the sciatica really kind of threw him off last year. He tried to play through it a little bit. I remember one game in the middle of a long absence, he came back in Philly to try to guard Embiid, and then he went back on the injured list for it. So I think there's a motivation level to him to show he can have a healthy season, a 65-game-ish season. And I think, you remember long stretches in the second half once the sciatica stuff had kind of dissipated. I thought he shot it well and played a lot better than early in the season. Obviously, he had the 4-3 night against the Clippers. You're probably asking why it's 2 years. He just thinks he's got a couple of years left, and, guaranteed money is guaranteed money, and the Warriors were willing to do it. Bigger picture on the Warriors' plans this year, more and more you just get the sense the roster is staying relatively stable. We'll see. Maybe they can strike a surprising trade, but it feels like they're going to have a lot of the same group back. Yeah,
it's one thing we were just discussing with Horford slates is that even at the end of the season, it's an expiring deal for $7 million, in which he was going to make $6 million this year, as you pointed out. You can trade that, and maybe a team buys him out or whatnot. I don't think it's a big deal whatsoever. I'm kind of with you there, but you just talked about the roster. And what if it looks the way it does right now? We were just having this conversation. Are they still a playing team if they just run it back, knowing that Horford's probably not going to play back-to-backs? If Kristaps Porzingis comes back, probably not going to play back-to-backs. Stephen Curry will be load-managed. Draymond Green, if he comes back, will probably be load-managed at times. So what does this roster look like? And is that acceptable? Does this brass want to just run it back and kind of just see where things go up until Jimmy Butler gets back? Because even if Jimmy Butler gets back, where are they at in the standings? And will he be eager to come back if they're, say, 10 games under 500?
Yeah, I can go a lot of ways with that. Do I think they're play-in bracket type team? Yeah, I think that'll at least be the expectations to be 7 through 10 in the West. Obviously, it will be dependent on health. I worry a little bit less about the guys skipping back-to-backs and more about how Steph's knee respond over the course of the season. Draymond had a pretty healthy year. Could he repeat that? Yaxel, I do think we talked about it, how much he's going to play. If he's a hit on the pick and suddenly you have a 6'9" every night wing that can play 25, 30 minutes, that changes the complexion. What what type of season could Porzingis give you if you do bring him back? Can they clean up some of the turnover stuff? I think fans, kind of shook their head a little bit at some of the Dunleavy Kerr press conferences when Steve returned about how much they hammered the turnover stuff. But if you actually think about it early in the year, remember all those games when Jimmy was still there that they were just giving away? Those are the games they really want to squeeze into wins this year. Right. If they're able to do that, they'll be in a better position when Jimmy does theoretically come back. I talked to Jimmy for maybe 10 minutes yesterday. I'll probably have a story coming relatively soon, but you can tell there's a motivation level for him to get back and play as many games as possible. Now, he's still going to miss a chunk of games. We're talking probably, early to mid-season. I would say probably mid-season at the earliest, but there's a motivation for several reasons for Jimmy Butler to get back.
I know one of those reasons, too. We'll get to that in just a second. But Draymond Green, obviously, he has a deadline up until 9 p.m. What's the latest on that? And you mentioned it. could there be something brewing with the Warriors quietly, like a Trey Murphy? Because I have no idea what's going on in New Orleans. I don't know what these teams are thinking. LaMelo Ball got traded yesterday. I had no idea what was going on in Charlotte, especially with the way they ended the season. Next thing you know, he's in Minnesota. So what's the latest on Draymond Green? Do you think he opts in for the 27, or does he opt out and get a new 2-year deal with the Dubs?
Yeah, so the opt-in, as I've kind of been reported on, like the expectation from the team as of recently was he is going to opt in to $27.6 million. Now there's it's something that will likely go up to that June 29th deadline before it's decided, partly because there is a world in which he would get a decline and extend, and that is where his first year salary lowering helps them swing a move to enhance the roster. If the question is just would they rather have him on 3 for 60, whatever, or would they rather have him on a more appetizable 1 for 27, and the answer seems to be 1 for 27, and that's not an amount of money Draymond Green's going to give up, I don't believe, and then go test unrestricted free agency. So again, as of this moment, I would expect him to be back on that player option, but things can change over the next week, and a surprising move could materialize, a surprising trade. I will say, I don't get the sense that the Warriors are in that big fish hunt quite like, Minnesota and their desperation level around Edwards, and the fact that they'll do 3 pick swaps and send a Naz Reid out for 2 reasons with the Warriors. Number one, they don't seem to have, those mid-tier type contracts where Charlotte really wants a starting center, right? Naz Reid, the Warriors can't offer that to them, or like Boston, for example, for Jaylen Brown. They don't have – Boston's trying to win next year even if they trade Jaylen Brown. The Warriors don't have a bunch of mid-level contracts they can stack up that are going to be huge rotation pieces for the Celtics. So that's a problem. And then, too, I don't – unless it is a mega star, I don't get the sense they're wanting to unload the cupboard of picks. When you talk to people in their front office, part of why they believe they're – set up decently for the next decade is they still control those picks.
Slater, let's say it plays out the way that you expect it to with Draymond, and that he eventually, before the deadline coming up on Monday, opts into his final year, that player option. Does that mean, are the Warriors viewing this as Draymond's last year as a Warrior, or will they be would they be open to revisiting anything and everything come a year from now?
They'd be open to revisiting, and you hear when you talk to him, it's not well, please opt into 1 year so he's just a guaranteed trade chip, or he's an expiring contract that walks next summer. There's a desire still, if everything breaks right, for Draymond to finish and retire as a Warrior, but I think they would be fine just going in unrestricted free agency next year and seeing what his market would potentially be.
Sure.
Because especially if his desire is to stay for the long term, it's probably something that would be pretty team friendly.
So is the motivation then to not give him the extra year now, just to clear their books as much as they possibly can for next year, just to pay him the full $27 million now and then revisit it in a year from now when maybe they have more flexibility?
Yeah, and this is just not a pure Draymond strategy here. This is clearly they're trying to set themselves up with real financial freedom into the future and control of their assets. That's what they have. They believe that gives them a lot of flexibility to do a ton of stuff in the future. I know at times fans can grumble about that protection of those future assets, but that's just clearly, part of the strategy. And that's why to them, Draymond at 1 for 27 in a vacuum right now would be more appealing than 3 at, that type of number that's in the 20s.
A couple quick hitters for you, Slater. What's the latest on Kristaps Porzingis? What are you hearing about KP?
Yeah, negotiating. I have gotten the sense that momentum is and was building towards a short-term deal. We'll see what exactly the money is. It's going to be some type of smaller number than the 31 he was on last year. But, nothing to announce at this moment. But I still believe that is likely to get done at some point.
Podziemski, obviously, new money could be on the table for him at some point later on in the year. What's the latest on him? Have they even started that dialogue yet between Podziemski and the Warriors brass?
No, that's typically more of your September, October type conversations, unless it's like your auto max, franchise, Paulo Banchero. Okay, Orlando gave it to him right away. Typically those negotiations happen later in the summer once the Warriors know a lot more about where their books stand now and into the future. From my understanding, that there's an openness and an optimism that they could get something done. Dunleavy, the Warriors front office, Pajemski and his agent Bill Duffy, but there's just so much other business happening in the league right now that's further down the line.
And then we get to Jimmy Butler. You mentioned it. Grady and I were talking about it. The motivation to come back. And there's a number of reasons why he's motivated. One could be the next type of contract he gets, right? He's on a contract. He's got a contract. He's in a contract year. And we know what Jimmy Butler is all about. Now, I don't think it's going to play out the way it played out in Miami or whatever happened to Philadelphia and Minnesota. But we know Jimmy Buckets is about his dollars. So you saw him yesterday. What was his temperament? What was his mood like? And is he already starting to think about that, saying, you know what? I could come back, play well, and get extended here and finish my career with the Golden State Warriors.
That's his desire. His confidence level remains extremely high in himself, and the belief that he can return as the player he left as, which, you guys can probably remember. I mean, that was like fringe all-star Jimmy Butler still. He had a great stretch right before the injury. So you wouldn't be surprised to know that he thinks he can get back to that. Now, this is different than a lot of his past situations because he has an injury recovery ahead of him. He's not even sprinting yet. He knows he has to prove it to get, the money and the security with the Warriors where he wants to be long term, but you can see it in his eyes. He's motivated to go prove it for, like I said, for several reasons.
So let's say this is a relatively straight up offseason. Draymond takes the player option, as you were talking about. Porzingis comes back. Who knows exactly what the number is going to be, but maybe around $15 million a year. What else can they do out there on the market? Are they going to have the full non-taxpayer mid-level? Is it just going to be the $6 million taxpayer mid-level? What other recourse do they have to add to the roster beyond just those guys that were Warriors last year?
Yeah, we'll see, where the Porzingis number comes in at, or if, it's not a done deal. If suddenly Porzingis walks elsewhere, then you got a lot more flexibility and tools, but also then you don't have Kristaps Porzingis. So that obviously needs to get solved. Just the LeBron James business in LA, I think everybody's kind of got an eye on that. Does that just conclude with him going back to LA as expected, or does it blow up? And if it does, could they get in the hunt for him? I believe they still need and will probably be looking for some type of scoring guard at a bargain. I don't know that an Anthony Simons would necessarily come at a bargain, but that type of player to me is where there's still kind of a hole in their roster. I think the fact that they did go Yaxel at the draft, shores up the wing and front court a little bit more. But yeah, they're not necessarily flush with cash, but I think part of this season is dialing back the price tag of their roster a bit. They've been deep into the tax for several years now, and lately has been producing play-in teams, yet they've got the most expensive roster in the league.
Yeah. Slater, interesting stuff. We appreciate it.
Hold on, real quick. Grady brought up Simons. That was his guy, man. He's tapped in. The Grady man, Slater.
Hey, I'm not sure he's going to land anywhere near what they can pay, but to me, I don't know. I mean, you guys see it too, right? It just feels like they need some scoring punch. And there's other names on the market too that will come for cheaper, but that to me is somewhere they're going to have to try to find something.
So how surprised would you be if the Warriors did make a trade? Because Trey Murphy's a guy we're talking about. We know they've been enamored with Trey Murphy for many years, going back to when he was going through the draft and he worked out here. And it was divided, right? A lot of people love Trey Murphy inside of that building. Does he actually get moved to New Orleans because you're tapped in with the entire league? Is that even possible for anybody to come up on Trey Murphy this offseason?
Well, you had heard that he was more available in the weeks leading up to the draft, and part of the reasoning on that is everyone in the league knew that the Pelicans wanted to get into the draft. There was rumors that they were very interested in Nate Ament, but they didn't get in the draft, right? Nothing happened on draft night. I think teams, including the Warriors, were very protective of the value of those lottery picks considering the draft. And I still, you hear Trey Murphy's name is still out there, but I think, again, part of what would have been the package that would make the Pelicans strike included a pick in the draft that now is no. I guess you could trade the rookie that you drafted, but typically that's not the case.
Yeah.